Russell's new role after Hamilton's exit. Domenicali dismisses driver concerns over 2026 rules. Don't overreact.
Welcome to AFS News. Now, you're going to be the first to know the hottest F1 news on the grid, and you'll be the most knowledgeable about F1 compared to your friends. Okay, no more small talk.
Russell's
Let's dive
new role
right in,
after
and don't
Hamilton's
forget
exit.
to subscribe.
Mercedes finds itself at a turning point. Lewis Hamilton's departure after 13 years and 6 world titles with the Brackley-based team was not just a farewell, but a shake-up that forced Mercedes to redefine its identity. The 7-time world champion now wears Ferrari red, while his former seat has been handed to 18-year-old rookie Andrea Kimi Antonelli. And in the middle of this transition, George Russell suddenly stands as the team's de facto leader. For many, Hamilton's exit could be seen as the loss of a cornerstone. Yet Russell views the moment differently. Speaking exclusively to motorsport.com, he insisted that this dramatic change is not entirely negative. Pastinya, Ada Perisan yang berbeda di dalam tim. Namun pada akhirnya, anda hanya melihat satu hal, yaitu performa. Kami jelas memulai dengan sangat baik. Sekarang, kami mengalami performa yang buruk. Saya harap kami dapat menjembalikannya ke jalan yang benar. Namun selalu ada pro dan kontra untuk setiap perubahan yang anda lakukan dalam organisasi manapun, Russell explained. But Russell went further, hinting that Hamilton's departure was not only good for the Briton himself but also for Mercedes as an organisation. Namun, saya pikir perubahan itu ada pada Lewis. Itu bagus untuknya. Ini sangat bagus untuk kami sebagai sebuah tim, sebuah awal yang baru. Terkadang anda perlu memetakan pola pikir tersebut untuk kembali ke jalan yang benar. Ironically, the fresh start Russell described has proven anything but smooth. Hamilton's Ferrari career has begun with difficulty, with his lone highlight being a sprint race victory in China. At 40, the veteran champion is still wrestling with a new environment and an unpredictable car. Antonelli's journey has been equally turbulent. His confidence was shaken after a rear suspension failure in Imola, leaving him uncertain about the car across several circuits. Only when Mercedes reverted to its older suspension in Hungary did some stability return. Russell secured a podium there, while Antonelli finally began to regain composure. Yet Russell feels the criticism aimed at the rookie is unfair, reminding everyone that Antonelli's struggles are tied directly to Mercedes' collective step backward. Russell defends Antonelli and shifts focus to 2026. Russell strongly defended his young teammate, arguing that the performance gap between them is much smaller than the results on paper suggest. The fact is, the difference in speed between him and me is not that big. I think that's what people don't see. In Canada, I was on pole position and he was 4th, but he was only 6/10 behind me. In Belgium, he went out in Q1 and I made it to Q3, but he was just 3/10 off me. People look at the results on paper, but the reality is that he is still making progress, even though we as a team have taken a step backwards. Suddenly, you are in a fight where a 1/10 of a second can mean 6 or 7 places on the grid, whereas before, for the positions we were fighting for, a 1/10 only meant plus or minus 1 place. Kimi and I have just taken the same step back in the last few races. Those words reveal an uncomfortable truth: Antonelli is not failing. Instead, he is suffering the same setbacks as Russell, but because of Formula One's razor-thin margins, those struggles look far worse in the results. In today's grid, a 1/10 of a second can separate glory from disaster. Looking beyond 2025, Russell acknowledged that Mercedes' development missteps with the W16 were damaging, but he remains convinced that the long-term project remains secure. It's clearly a completely different concept for next year, But you still need people who feel creative, confident in themselves, with simulations and tools that work properly, Russell said. At the end of the day, this is a sport based on decisions and people, because it's the people who create the simulations and everything else, and we need them to be in the best possible place. Of course, the lack of performance recently hasn't been ideal, but the reality is that 95% of the workforce is already focused on 2026. So that group of people isn't in the usual emotional cycle anymore. Russell's words underline a clear message: Mercedes is already pivoting to the 2026 era. The team has chosen to invest its resources into the future, even if it means enduring short-term pain. For Russell, the responsibility of guiding Antonelli while carrying Mercedes through this transition is immense. The looming question remains: will this fresh start truly bring Mercedes back to the front of Formula One, or is it the beginning of a slow decline? Domenicali dismisses driver concerns over 2026 rules. Don't overreact. Formula One is on the verge of introducing one of the biggest regulation overhauls in its history. In 2026, brand new chassis and next-generation power units will change the very DNA of the sport. But not everyone is welcoming the revolution. Several drivers who have already tested the 2026 prototype cars and simulators have voiced concerns, including Ferrari's Charles Leclerc, who suggested the new cars could be less fun to drive. F1 President and CEO Stefano Domenicali, however, insists he is not worried at all. We cannot forget that there are two approaches regarding the new regulations. First, a tactical approach, and teams play that game, and this leads to certain comments and views. They have a specific purpose for that, which is not really the objective we believe in, and that's why they make those comments. According to Domenicali, much of the unease comes from the fact that the regulations are still evolving. I remember the real discussions we had with the FIA, the teams, and the drivers at the beginning of the year, and today it is already very different. So even before starting the new regulations, things are progressing in the right direction. One of the early flashpoints was the need for lift and coast strategies to save energy. But Domenicali says that problem is already fading. And if at the beginning I heard lift and coast, now that argument is almost gone. Maybe it's still there in 2 or 3 situations, but I am quite sure that the relationship between the teams and the FIA is there. Because in the end, they are the ones who need to ensure these regulatory adjustments will be sorted. Wait and see approach. For Domenicali, the worst mistake F1 could make would be to panic and rush into changes before the new era has even begun. He urged everyone to remain open-minded. The mindset is to be open to understanding what is happening. Right now, there are so many theories saying everything can happen. The right thing to do is, first of all, not to overreact. He reminded critics that F1 has often faced radical rule changes, and the sport has always found ways to adapt. We have seen in our F1 experience that sometimes there is always an overcautious approach and then things develop differently. So I would say, let's wait and see where we are. If adjustments are needed, we don't have to do them immediately. In fact, Domenicali hinted that some manufacturers may already be thinking ahead about how to exploit the 2026 rules to their advantage. Maybe already, potentially, some teams or manufacturers are thinking about ways to develop the car to take advantage of the new regulations. So the approach will always be based on curiosity. There will be extraordinary attention on the first race next year, but it's true that we need to give it time and the right discussions with the FIA and the teams to see if there is anything major we missed. Critical take. Domenicali's optimism is clear, but it could also be read as oversimplification. Leclerc's concerns are not just political games by the teams, they highlight a genuine risk that the 2026 cars may not deliver the same thrill behind the wheel. If the new generation of cars proves less exciting to drive, the consequences won't stop with the drivers. The spectacle for fans could suffer as well. history shows that overly restrictive regulations can backfire, making racing more predictable and less engaging. Domenicali's call to not overreact might be a sensible way to maintain calm, but it could also be perceived as brushing off legitimate concerns. And if F1 realizes too late that the 2026 rules undermine the quality of racing, the damage could be hard to repair. With the world watching, the first races of 2026 will serve as a real test. Is Domenicali's confidence justified, or is it just rhetoric to protect F1's image in the face of mounting skepticism?